Hey, what's going on everyone? Welcome back to 75 South Garden. Today is July 20th and I'll be giving you guys a full tour of my summer garden. So we're going to start right here on the back porch, then I'll work my way down to the main cage. Okay, now on the back porch here, the majority of my containers are pepper plants. I also have a few containers with cherry tomatoes, like the one that you see here. Now this is my husky red cherry tomato plant, and it seems to be doing pretty good in the container here. Now the only thing that I tried new this year was I've added a few marigolds to some of my pepper plants, just to see how they would do as companions in such a small container, and they seem to be doing pretty good. Now down here I have a pineapple plant growing, and another cherry tomato. Now this one is a super sweet cherry tomato, and it's coming along pretty good. Now over here in my 5-gallon buckets, let's get a closer look. I have a rosemary growing along with sage. This tomato plant here is a super beef. It's just starting to show its flowers. Now down here in this 5-gallon, we have a bush bean growing along with a pickled cucumber vine and another cherry tomato plant. Now if anyone's growing cucumbers, you don't want to leave them on until they turn yellow like this one. As you can see, it's also turned brown at the top. And it smells pretty bad. Once they get to this point, they become bitter. So you want to pull them off when they're still green. And I'll give you a better example when I get down to the main cage. Now right here, what you're looking at are mangoes that I started from seed. And you've probably seen me transplant these in my Gardeners for Beginners video, where I showed you how to make your own soil mix. And everything back here on the porch is in that same soil mix. Now over here, these are my runners that I've been collecting from my strawberries. And they're still producing strawberries in the late summer. And I'll probably have strawberries all the way throughout the fall season. And those are bunching onions. They're supposed to keep most of the bugs away, but they don't keep all the bugs away. Now that's pretty much it for the back porch. Peppers, mangoes, rosemary, sage, tomatoes, and marigolds, and cucumbers. Now over here in the corner, these are the last 4 collard transplants that I have, and this is, I believe, a Chandler strawberry runner. And over here we have the Georgia collards that germinated from my last video. Okay, so I'm inside the main cage behind my tomato beds, and this is where I'm growing my pickled cucumbers. Now if you take a look here, there's one ready to harvest. You want to harvest them while they're still nice and green. You don't want to wait until they get yellow. They're not all going to get the same size. Same with this one. It has started to turn yellow on the bottom, but it's still good. Now these look like okras, And I know I didn't plant any okras over here, but I'll let them grow anyway, along with the cherry tomatoes. Now over here alongside the fence, we have another one that's ready to harvest. Same thing here. You want to pick them when they're nice and green. And that's it for the cucumbers. And it looks like I forgot one right here, but it could go another day or two before I harvest it. It's nowhere near the size of these. And this is the ideal size for the pickled cucumbers. So I might leave that one on for another day or two. And these are still growing all down the gate here. Look at these two lovebirds. This is what I have for aphid control. Now let's go around the other side and check out these tomato plants. Now here are my tomato plants. On the left in this bed we have super beefs, and we also have a marglobe. Now it looks like it's about to rain, so I'm going to have to complete this video tomorrow. But if anyone has any tomatoes that have started to ripen and you're expecting heavy rain, go ahead and take it off. Because if you don't, that tomato could split. Okay, so down here in front of the raised bed, I have fresh Market More cucumber seedlings growing, and they're just going to climb the wire here and produce throughout the fall. Over here, these are all bell peppers. Now this is a 3 by 9 foot raised bed that was built from pine slabs. The back row are all red bell pepper plants, and the front row, these are mixed colors from a package that I got from the Dollar Tree. Now if you're growing bell peppers and you notice that you have lots of flowers but you don't see any bell peppers, you probably have a pollination issue. So just like on your tomatoes, you want to come in every now and then and give it a little shake like that. Or you can get a vibrating toothbrush like this and simply touch the flower. And what that's going to do is shake the pollen loose down to the center of the flower and pollinate your bell pepper, and within a few days you should see that flower die off and the pepper come behind it. And right here, this is my Genovese basil that is ready to harvest so that it doesn't flower also. And down below it, I had a daisy growing along with snapdragons, but as you can see, they're pretty much done for the season. And right here, it's one of the most annoying plants you could grow in your garden. This is a peppermint plant. Now if you let this get out of control, it will take over your raised beds. Now over here beside my basil, I have 2 blackberry bushes growing in my 5-gallon buckets. And down in between, I have another sage plant. Beside the sage, this is a carrot that has now went to seed. So now what I'm waiting on is for these to turn completely brown so that I can harvest the seeds, and these will be my carrots for the season. Now over here we have more cucumbers and a marigold. Now this one is starting to look pretty rough. That's why I started new ones. But as you can see, it's still producing cucumbers. Now over here in the corner, this is the shaded area of the yard. As you can see, I have this big pine tree and another oak tree there. So this is where I like to grow mostly herbs. We have another basil that's ready to harvest. And we also have Italian oregano. Now over here in front of this raised bed, these are my garden mums. Now I'll probably plant these guys in the front yard and they will bloom in the fall. And over here I have more sweet potatoes. I know it's July, but I am still planting sweet potato slips. Now down here in Georgia, we have that crazy weather. And last year, instead of November 10th, we didn't get a frost until mid-December. So I'm gonna let those grow until we actually get a real frost this time. And right here, I'm growing cantaloupe in the 20-pound grow bag. We actually have one right there that may be pollinated, but I'm not sure because it's been raining for the last few days. But I'm gonna let that grow wild and we'll see what happens. Now over here, this is actually where I was growing my potatoes, but the ones that I planted didn't come up due to all the rainfall, so they probably got soggy and fed the worms. Now over here on the trellis, these are black-eyed peas, along with pinto beans. And they're going to grow up the trellis here, and I'll be harvesting those in the fall. So now we're back to the tomato bed. And down here in the small holes of the center blocks, I have bush beans. And most of them, like this one, are ready to harvest. And I also have some Royal Burgundy bush beans growing in here. And they're doing pretty good. They're ready to harvest also. The more beans you pick, the more flowers it's going to put out. And these will grow all the way throughout the fall. I have bush beans growing all the way down through each cinder block. And here we have another okra that I know I didn't plant here. And another royal purple. Now I may let this one grow for another day or two. We have more yellow ones here. So if you haven't started growing any bush beans, go ahead and give them a try. They grow pretty easy and don't require much. There's more bush beans in this bed. So I'll be harvesting most of these today, along with a few other things. And up here on this trellis, I have pinto beans. Now you want to harvest your pinto beans once they turn brown or yellow, like you see here. Okay, so these are the ones that I decided to harvest. And I'll take those inside when I get done. But there are still plenty on these plants. And I'm just going to let them get bigger. Now they won't all be the same size, but they can get a little bigger before they start to swell up and get tough. Now let's move along to this side of the bed. These are all cherry tomatoes. Now I decided to grow these later in the season because these plants here can be a real headache when it comes to harvesting. If you grow too many in one spot, you'll be harvesting cherry tomatoes every day. Last year I had about 12 of these in a 4x8 bed. And every day I would have to harvest at least 100 of these guys. And it got to the point where it was very annoying. So I decided to grow them later in the season and not grow as many in one bed. Now down here at the bottom, I have zinnias and more marigolds. Now let's move along to this bed. In this bed here, I have all of my Georgia collards, except for this one here. I'm going to open this up so you guys can get a better view of them. I'll probably harvest some of that basil also. So right now what I'm going to do is go ahead and harvest all of the collard leaves towards the bottom. And I'm also going to harvest most of that basil because it's reached the top of the netting. I also have some that are done on the other side. collards and fresh basil. Now over here in this bed, these are bunny choice collards. Now I won't be harvesting leaves from these. I'll be pulling the whole plants by simply grabbing them and pulling them out of the ground just like that. Now I'll also be replacing those with the 4 plants that I have on my back porch. Now the same thing over here in the front, in the small holes of the cinder blocks, I have more bush beans growing. I also have more over here that I planted about a week ago. Okay, now back over here in the middle, I have another super beefsteak. I got a few tomatoes from this plant, but as you can see, it's still growing. And beside it, I have a little lime tree growing, along with 2 lemon trees in the containers here. And on the end, this is my dwarf kale plant. Now you already know this side is where I have my super beefsteak tomatoes growing. But down here, I have more basil. And these are also ready to harvest. So what I'll do is just come in like this and chop it off. That way it'll bush out more and it won't flower like the one here. I'm also going to let that one finish so that I can collect seeds. Now all I have to do is let this dry out along with the other basil that I have here. Now these are the collards that I just harvested, and you can tell the difference from the Georgia collard and the bunny choice. Alright y'all, I had to cover this up. There's too many bugs flying around and I don't want them in there with my collards. So back to the tomatoes. And in the front here I have another super beefsteak. And it's doing pretty good also. Now this is one of my favorite varieties to grow, and it also has a decent yield. Now if you look closely here, it starts off with 3 to 4 per cluster. But just like the plants over here, they start off small with 2 to 3 per cluster. Then it goes up to 5. And if you go up a little higher, you will see about 10 per cluster here. Now these are a different variety. The whole front row is Cherokee purple, and the back row are all black trim except for the 2 on the end. Those 2 are the bodacious hybrids. Now they didn't do so well last year, and I had them growing right here where the collards are. So I decided to try them over here this year, and they're doing the same thing. I haven't seen not one tomato yet from these 2 plants. So this will probably be my last year growing the bodacious hybrid. And we also have a few random cherry tomato plants. One there, one there. We have one here. We also have another one growing out of the center of that cinder block. Now if I go back here to the back, this is where I've seen at least 50 random tomato plants, including this one here. Now this is from not picking them or picking them up off the ground. This one here is growing into the neighbor's yard. And we have another one there. So if you're going to grow cherry tomatoes and they fall down to the soil, make sure you pick them up, or they will grow the following year once it starts to warm up. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the main cage. Now outside of the main cage, I have a little experiment going. These are sweet potato slips in the container here, but inside of the tires, these sweet potato slips are still connected to the actual potato. Now I've been told that if you grow sweet potato slips that are still connected to the potato, that you will only get plants and no potatoes. So we're going to see if we get a bunch of leaves or potatoes. It's my little experiment. And here's that cucumber vine again. Now if you take a look over here, this cucumber has actually grown since yesterday and is now ready to harvest. Now when harvesting your cucumbers, you don't have to wait until they reach the full size. You can pick them anywhere from 4 to 6 inches. Now let's go over here to the corner garden. Alright, so over here in the corner, this is where I usually grow my cabbage and sunflowers. I've even tried to grow watermelon over here. I usually grow my cabbage in the raised bed right there. So I'm going to start right here on the side and work my way down. Now these are the last 2 sweet potato slips from the same sweet potato that I just showed you guys a few minutes ago. And behind it, I have a lemon balm growing. Now it looks a little rough because I just transplanted it maybe 2 weeks ago from the other side of the yard to make space. And right here in the 5-gallon bucket, I have a potato plant growing. Now, I think this is a red Norland, but I'm not sure. I may be mixed up with the one I have growing there. Now in the 2 20-pound grow bags, these are all sweet corn plants. And right here, this is the raised bed that I showed you all how to build without using tools. These are all sunflowers. And in between the raised beds, I have marigolds. Those are the petite yellows. Now along the front here in the 20-pound grow bags, these are all sweet potatoes. Now I'm not sure of the variety. These are just some sweet potatoes that I got from the local farmer's market. Now this 20-pound grow bag here, these are my tender sweet watermelons. So hopefully I get a few before the season is over with. And the raised bed there, that's more sweet corn. Now over here in this blue container, these are all okra plants except for these 2 in the back. Those are black-eyed peas. And there are also more black-eyed peas in the first 2 cinder blocks right here. But in the front of those cinder blocks, we have more bush beans. And in my 5-gallon bucket here, this is a super beef tomato plant that's probably on its last tomato. I've got about 10 from this plant, and it doesn't look like it's going to be growing anymore. But you never know, these things can get up to 20 feet without a problem. Now this area is also 5 by 20 feet. So if this is all the space that you have in your backyard, you can get a garden started. There's no excuses. And right here behind the corner garden, I have a grapevine that's growing in an art trellis that I built a few years ago. And it has finally started to produce grapes. Now there is one more variety growing in here along with the green ones, but my lovely dog decided to chew the vine earlier this year, and I didn't get to it in time to save it. And by the time it grew back, it only reached the top of this part of my trellis. So hopefully next year we'll have grapes from both vines. Now behind my grapevine, I have my fruit trees. Now these two in the 5-gallon containers are some sort of citrus tree. I'm not sure what it is because I lost the label. So I'm going to wait until those finish producing, and I'll find out what they are later. But right here, we have a pear tree that's doing pretty good. It only has 2 pears that survived this year. The rest of them had some milky looking residue, so I pulled them. And down here is a peach tree that was full of peaches until the squirrels got to it. I come home one day and they were jumping from tree to tree as if they were playing dodgeball or something. So we're left with one peach. And over in the corner, this is my plum tree. Now beside the peach tree here in the art trellis, this is a kiwi. And I have one more peach tree right here. Now this is the other tree that they were jumping from, and they only left me 2 little peaches. One here. We have another one up here. So next year I'll just leave these up against the house because I originally had them over there where the corner garden is until the squirrels got to them. Now on the end I have 2 apple trees. We actually have 1 apple growing, but it also doesn't look that good either. As you can see, it's pretty wrinkled. And that's pretty much it for this side of the yard. And I have one more experiment that I'm doing. I'm going to show you that and wrap up the video. I'm on the side of the house now, and this is experiment number 2. And it's simply more sweet corn. Now these were started on the 11th, but they were transplanted on the 19th of July. So I'm going to see if I can get these to finish by the time that the fall season is over, and maybe we'll have more sweet corn to harvest. And that's pretty much it for today's video, you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed the yard tour, and always remember to plan your garden with your health in mind.